Today we're reading Parrots Over Puerto Rico. Above the treetops of Puerto Rico flies a flock of parrots green as their island home. If you look up from the forest, you're very lucky. You might catch the bright blue flashes of their flight feathers. You hear the harsh call of these Puerto Rican parrots. They lived on this island for millions of years, and they nearly vanished from the earth forever. This is their story. Long before we came to Puerto Rico, thousands of parrots flew over the island and the smaller islands nearby. Iguaca, iguaca, the parrots called as they looked for deep nesting holes in the tall trees. Down below from the Caribbean Sea, the Atlantic Ocean wished the island white sand beaches, delicate orchids, light spreading ferns, tiny tree frogs, kapok trees bursting with seed pods, and scaly iguanas covered the land. Iguaca, iguaca, the parrots called as they flew to Sierra palm trees to eat their dark, bitter fruit. Around 5000 BCE, people came to the island in canoes from the lands to the south. These people planted corn, yucca, sweet potatoes, peanuts, pineapple. When they look up, they saw bright blue flashes of their flight feathers. More groups of people came. The Taínos arrived around 800 CE. They hunted the parrots for food and kept them as pets. Taínos gave the parrots a name, Iguaca. After their harsh call, they gave the island name to Boracay. Iguaca, iguaca, the parrots flew when the hurricane blew down the old trees with their nest. After the hurricane passed, the parrots flew through the treetops to find new nesting holes. Christopher Columbus sailed from Europe in Boracay in 1493. They claimed the island for Spain. The Spanish settlers were planting crops and the building houses and schools with wood, brick, stone. Each time hurricanes destroyed their homes and schools, the settlers rebuilt them. The Spaniards called the parrots corotas, as they gave the island a new name, Puerto Rico, Bridgeport. In the treetops searched the parrots searched for mates. The new pairs of parrots sat on the branches, bowing, calling back and forth to each other and fluffing their wings and tails. Each other raised a family of chicks every year, and now people from many parts of the world came to live in Puerto Rico. In 1513, Africans were brought to the island slaves under the hot sun and the fields of sugar cane and other crops. More people came from Spain too, as they mirrored Taínos Africans, and they all settled themselves in Boracay. People of Boracay, they were still ruled by Spain. What the parrots called the red-tailed hawks chased them in the treetops. The parrots flocked together to protect themselves from the hawks. For centuries, people from other countries in Europe tried to capture Puerto Rico. These countries wanted to control the deep harbor San Juan, the capital city where merchant ships and warships would be launched. The Borakas protected their island. Starting in 1539, they built a fort that grew and grew until the walls were 18 feet, 5.5 meters thick. For hundreds of years, and no country was able to take over Puerto Rico from Spain. Iguaca, iguaca. Iguaca, whether the parrots called as they found the nesting holes had been inviting by the creatures brought the islands by settlers. Black rats from the settlers' ships climbed the tall trees. The parrot's eggs, honeybees that had escaped from the hive, swarmed the parrot's nest. In 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. The war led by Cuba and the other Spain's colonies finally spilled over Puerto Rico. Thousands of American soldiers landed on the island, began battling Spanish troops. Spain lost the war and lost control of Puerto Rico. The island became a territory of the United States. In 1917, Puerto Rico became U.S. citizens. Puerto Ricans. Iguaca, iguaca, the parrots called as the forests remained in their nests. They were cut down. Parrots began to disappear places where they had flown for millions of years. By In 1950s, the birds called pearly-eyed thrashers moved around the rainforest, tried to steal the parrots from nesting holes. Like clever thieves, these birds entered places where the other birds struggling to live to compete with them for nest sites. The parrots spotted the thrashers, jabbing them with their sharp beaks, defending their nests. Harsh cries. The parrots had too many enemies, too few trees. The flock became smaller and smaller. By 1954, there were about 200 parrots left. Puerto Ricans elected their first governor. The island became a U.S. Commonwealth, not a state, but independent nation. But something between the people argued. Their island remained Commonwealth. Should it be a state? Should it be independent like of the United States? Everyone had a different idea, but they were all proud to say, Yo soy Boruca. I am Puerto Rican. The flock of Puerto Rican parrots became smaller. By 1967, the 24 parrots live in El Yuque. Iguacahuaca, the parrots called as they look for some place, any place, to find food and nesting holes for their chicks. Puerto Ricans looked up as their guacas were almost gone. People had nearly caused the parrots to become extinct. Now people started to help the parrots stay alive. In 1964, the governments, United States, and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico worked together to create a Puerto Rican recovery program. Its goal was to protect the parrots, and the first plan was their created aviary and a safe place for parrots to live and raise chicks. Parrots squawk as the scientists long handled the nest, gently lifted their eggs and chicks from the nesting holes. The scientists always left at least one egg or chick in each nest so birds could continue living in the wild. In 1973, over Nuke, the incubators in the aviary kept the eggs warm. The Puerto Rican parrots raised in captivity had no experience as parents. The Hispaniolan parrots helped raise the chicks. These parrots came from nearby islands of Hispaniola. They're like cousins of Puerto Rican parrots, but not as rare. More than 100 years of Puerto Rican parrots flew over the islands, and by 1975, only 13 parrots were left in the rainforest. The worried scientists built special nesting boxes to put them in trees where parrots were likely to nest. The parrots inspected the nesting boxes but moved, and these nesting boxes were deep and dark, like nesting holes. Puerto Rico parents find the wild. A bird sitting in the top of the box cannot see all the way to the bottom. Pearly-eyed thrashers like to see the bottoms of their nests, so the thrashers left the parrots' nesting boxes alone. Wild parrots squawked. Scientists gently placed chicks from the aviary in their nesting holes. Chicks learn how to fly in the wild. 1979, very chicks raised into the rainforest. Scientists worked hard to keep the parrots healthy, both detective and the wild birds. One chick was rescued in the wild after wings or belly damaged gooey slime inside its nest. Scientists rebuilt a berry parrot wings using old and discarded parrot feathers, pins, and glue. They watched the parrots and used the new wings to fly for the first time. By 1979, there were 15 captive parrots. Most had come from eggs, and chicks were taken from the wild nest to the aviary. Hurricane Hugo roared through the treetops in Puerto Rico in 1989, while the parrots caught as the winds blew down their many tall trees. The hurricane wiped out crops and wrecked buildings and homes. In the aviary, the scientists worried about all the parrots and had another bad hurricane blew down warmer trees. What if the aviary was damaged? The group of the parrots squawk scientists moved them from aviary to a new aviary in Rio Bajo Forest. This forest was less humid than El Yunque. Many parrots had once lived there. Now there are two safe places for captive parrots to live and raise chicks. Rio Bajo Aviary opened in 1993. It had some challenges. Thunderstorms sometimes caused incubators to lose power. The scientists found generators that kept the power overflowing in the incubator. Scientists also tried some new ideas, kept more aggressive parrots and the gentler ones. The gentler birds would be not be frightened. That was the cage for young parrots, adults, so the birds can see how adult parrots behave. The number of parrots at aviary grew by 1999. And Rio Bajo Aviary had 54 Puerto Rican parrots. The recovery program was ready for the next part of its plan, releasing adult parrots raised in captivity into the wild. In 2000, captive bred parrots were released in El Yunque in late spring. The wild chicks had already full their nests, and wild adults were still nearby. Captive bred parrots could see them, join them in Guacahuela. The parrots called as they flew in the newcomers search for food. The captive bred parrots have been trained to find food and avoid hawks, but many of them were caught anyways. So that before the 16 parrots were released in 2001, they were given extra training. They heard a hawk's whistle as a cutout hawks passed over their cages. They watched a trained hawk attack a Spinolian parrot as wearing a protective leather jacket. In the time, the parrots learned how to stay hide from hawks nearby. When these parrots were released and more of them survived in the wild, scientists were ready to create a second wild flock. In 2006, 22 captive bred parrots were released in the Rio Bajo forest. Nearly released birds formed pairs, found nesting boxes that raised their chicks. Dozens of parrots have been released in Rio Bajo since then. They have begun to spread through the forest. If you look up from the forest, you are very lucky. You might catch the bright blue flashes of fly feathers. These are Puerto Rican parrots. They lived on this island for millions of years, and they nearly vanished from the earth forever. But they're nearly flying over Puerto Rico, calling guaca guaca. These are some pictures. How they look like. Do you have any questions about the book? What do you like about the book? What do you most learn about the book?